So now what I'd like to do is my privilege to introduce our own Lynn Figurate, Riverside County Office of Education Administrator. Lynn has several years experience with ELD, ELA, and all things writing. He is actually our writing specialist, but also a member of our science team. He will be giving his keynote on writing and especially strategies of writing and doing abstracts. Lynn?
Well, thank you very much, Greg. I really appreciate that that wonderful introduction. I appreciate that. So let's go ahead and get started. Again, my name is Lynn Figurate, and welcome to the Riverside County Science Engineering Fair Expo. Woohoo! Good morning. So it's really great to be here. Again, my name is Lynn Figurate. Figurate is a very an uncommon name, right? A lot of people say Figurate, and I've heard really it all. But if you ever forget my name during this presentation, just think about it a little bit, and I'm sure that you'll figure it out. But it's really been nothing like having the name Lynn growing up, right? So every year my friends would razz me because the teacher would always say, "Where is she?" But I'm here to tell you, after 20 years of just really deep psychoanalysis and therapy, I finally gotten over the scar that's really taken. So thank you, teachers, throughout the years. Actually, I'm only on year 9 of that therapy, so I'll let you know how it goes when we get there. So anyway, it's really great to be here. So we're going to talk about abstract writing. Abstract writing is can be a lot of fun, and it also can be very frustrating. So today we're going to talk a little bit about improving your abstract writing in 3 different areas: focus and organization, effective expression of ideas, command of conventions. All those 3, I think, will really set you on the way that will really help you in terms of what you're doing. Hey, take a look at some of this research about writing. Really important for us to recognize that writing is not really easy for a lot of kids. It's not easy for a lot of adults. In fact, look at that 3rd bullet down on the left-hand side. Poor writing skills have cost businesses $3.1 billion annually, according to the National Commission on Writing 2004. Okay, so I added that in your handouts in the folders so that you could take a look at that. And now I'm sure that it's much less than that. No, it's going to be more, right? Because poor writing skills, it's costing businesses. And the reason for that, there's just many, many reasons for that. But it's affecting the workplace. It's affecting what's happening on universities. So important. Take a look at that, the bullet down there. Only 1 out of 4 12th grade students is a proficient writer. That we have some work to do in really what we're doing with our writing. And I'll tell you, that's going to be really important. Up above, 35% of high school graduates, and you've got 35% of graduates in the workplace are feeling like their writing is not meeting their expectations. So recognize that, students are feeling this way. It's actually happening. Businesses are feeling this way. And so we really want to take the time to really start talking about writing and really doing what's, I think, right in the classroom as well. I know today that my audience is not just students of really writing science fair projects, but it's also the ability to be able to look at what is the classroom doing? When we talk about best first instruction in a classroom, people ask me all the time, okay, so Lynn, what are those components that will be in the classroom that we really want to have? There are many. I'm very opinionated about this. What should it look like? What should it be? And I'll tell you, it takes time to put this in place in our schools and in our districts. It's the work that we do at really Riverside County Office of Education of really helping places to really have all of the writing needs. Now, as a student, if you did not have this, you would not be alone. Really, so many classrooms suffer. They don't have all these pieces. So take a look at this list and ask yourself the question, have I had really great writing instruction? Start talking to your teachers. Hey, I don't want to be part of that statistic. I really want to be proficient in my writing. Particularly in the sciences, folks, we need that science literacy. And so we've really dedicated ourselves really to spend the next years of really dedicating ourselves to try to get that science literacy in place. Okay, so specifically in writing an abstract, what are we looking at? What types of things are we trying to do in order to make this happen? So an abstract, as you know, is that short summary after your longer work of your research paper, or your research project. And it's going to be a concise report that really gets out just a few things. Now, remember, you write that abstract at the very end. You don't write it first. It's going to be at the end of your project. And then it's just a concise, here's really what happens, so that your reader really knows what's going on. Check out that last bullet. Only about 150 to 300 words, but that's not what you're going to get from Riverside County. You actually get a whopping 500 words in order to really get that abstract. For some of you, that's actually not going to help you in the long run, because you have other science fairs, other projects that you have to attend to. But from our standpoint, you have lots of latitude to bring background to what you're doing, so that we really get a good understanding of what you're doing. But ultimately, we've got to help you to really whittle that thing down, because in some science fairs, you're going to have to get that down to like 250 words. That's pretty much of an average what we're trying to do. So you've got to make sure that you check the requirements of that governing agency every single time. All right, so some things to avoid when we're writing an abstract. You got to avoid jargon. I'll talk about that in a little bit. Any technical terms that readers are not going to understand, abbreviations, acronyms that are not going to be understood. We don't have bibliographies, citations, tables, graphs in an abstract. You're going to write this abstract for really 12 months of that research or less. And then you're going to just put really what you've done inside this abstract, and not put the acknowledgments of anyone that's helped you along the way. Perhaps you're being mentored, or perhaps you're mentoring someone, perhaps you are working with a scientist really in your project, but that is not a place necessarily to put your acknowledgments. All right, so let's focus on really how to make that improvement. The first place would be focus and organization. Now, check all these documents out. These are called informal outlines. Sometimes they're just called outlines. Sometimes they're called organizational structures, but they help you along the way to really organize your thinking on what you're going to do in writing. Now, at your school, you may have a certain way that you're doing this. On this form, you have kind of an online version of some blank. You have step up to writing here. You have right from the beginning, right to the future. You have some very common ones that our districts are using right now in order to help you to use focus and organization. But an informal outline is really important in that it allows you to plan what you're going to do with your writing. Here's some of the definitions that you have there. It's really a visual listing of the main concepts that you're trying to write. It might use colors like you've seen in the last one. We try to use color really with students to help them to see how things can be used. And then later on, when you're bringing together things like informative, explanatory, and narrative, and they have different colors, and you start to fuse them together, it begins to make sense. Oh, that's where it's coming together. But sometimes you might use bullet points or numbers or graphic space to really help you to organize those topics, some way to get it going. But they're written in fragments. They're not complete sentences on an informal outline. You got to think jot. Just 1, 2, or 3 words. That's all you're going to do. You're just going to jot your ideas. Just 1, 2, or 3 words. And really, you're going through very quickly to get an idea of what you're going to do. And then it provides you that easy checklist for proofreading. Very important. Now, what's really great about what we've been doing is providing for you really that informal outline. I don't know if you saw this really on the packet. You saw that it's really breaking down for you that informal outline. So pay attention to these things, because they're requirements that they're really and expectations that you're going to want to make sure that you include in your abstract. So I'm blowing it up here so that you can see that very thing from the informal outline. So again, your abstract should be written after you finish your project. You're going to make sure it's 500 words or less. Man, who gets that? Thank you very much, by the way. And then here are the pieces that you're going to want to include in that particular piece of writing. It's just going to be, a little bit, and you're going to want to make sure that you have the background, the purpose, the problem question, the methods and procedure that you've done in your research, the claim or results that you have, and then any application or further consideration. So those 5 pieces you're going to want to make sure that are included every time that you write an abstract for us. That's going to be really important. Okay, so how will you remember this? So, hey, let's use a mnemonic device to help us along the way. So BPMCA, how could we say that? Okay, so one way that we could say is Brad Pitt marries Christina Aguilera. That's one way for us to remember that. I'm sure there's lots of acronyms for you to remember that, but it was like the easiest one for me. My son said band players marry cartoon animators. That's good too. And I'm sure a lot of you are thinking of another way for you to figure out what's an easy way to do that. But Brad Pitt marries Christina Aguilera, right? We've got the background, the purpose, the problem question, methods, procedure, claim results, application, further considerations. Okay. So let's see how this looks in an example. So this is Alexandria Bowman, and she's going to be showing us an abstract example using GIS site suitability analysis to study adaptability and evolution of life, locating springs and mantle units in ophiolites. So what is that all about? So the research focus, biogeochemistry and computer modeling, wonderful. Glad to have this example. It's really a great starting point for us to begin to talk about abstract example. So what's the first thing, Brad Pitt? Oh yeah, Brad, we have to have that background and purpose. So in Alexandria's piece here, look what she does. She provides us some background. She starts off with one of those abbreviations. How many of you know what a GIS is? Okay, so if that's not familiar with people, in fact, I ask around and most people say, oh yeah, I kind of know what that is. It means I think it's a geographic, or maybe it's a geo something, geography, geology. No, it's a geographic information system. So you might want to say that front, but Alexandria just lays it out. GIS is a powerful tool that can be used to locate spring source in ophiolites. So what's an ophiolite? The really cool part of what she does is that she embeds really in context clues what ophiolites are as you continue on this reading. So you don't always have to spell everything out when you're doing this. Sometimes context clues will help people to really read what it is. But the important piece is that you really provide that background to what you're doing. The unique features associated with these springs include a reducing subsurface environment, reacting at low temperatures, producing high pH, calcium-rich formation fluids with high dissolved hydrogen and methane. Because of their unique chemical characteristics, these areas are often associated with microbes and are thought to be similar to the features that enable life to evolve on Earth. Okay, wonderful. We have some background there. And then we see the purpose. She has a couple of other sentences that really goes into the problem that we're going to be looking at next. But then the goal of this study was to develop a model that could locate these unique geological features without first going into the field, thus saving time, money, reducing the risk associated with remote field localities. All right, so we have both the background and purpose that's in this piece. Wonderful. We hit that and we're doing a really great job so far. All right. So then the second thing we want, right, Brad Pitt, we want the problem or the question that we have. Springs have traditionally been located using expensive time consuming field techniques. Field work can be dangerous. So we see the problem there, and then really that problem is answered in the next piece. And it could have been in the form of a question. We could have, but they answer it really in that purpose. And so I added that on there because it's saving time, money, reducing the risk associated with remote, because it's an answer to that problem that we see what's going on. Okay, so the methods and procedure would be next. So you see here, we have that GIS site suitability analysis that's really working on the second sentence there for this project I use surface and ground water maps, geologic maps, a soil map, a fault map for 4 counties in Northern California. Very clear, concise, just getting out there exactly what did you do for your methods and procedure. Now, also notice that we're only talking about a couple of sentences here. We're not really just giving it all. This is not the research paper. This is really just a concise statement. Hey, what did you do? A really important piece for those of you who are teaching in the classroom and you're teaching kids how to summarize, how to really whittle that down and to be concise. Bravo, that's what we need. Our scientists need to really spend time of really getting all that information down, not being verbose, and really getting that information down. All right, so next we have the claims results. Christina Aguilera. So on the claims and results, the model has demonstrated that it's possible to use this time of the model, apply it to complex geologic area to produce a usable field map for future field work. So we have that claims and results really in one sentence that tells us what's going on. And then the application of further consideration. Look what Alexandria did. She goes in the middle of that sentence, locating and sampling these springs could offer a deeper look into Earth's deep biosphere and the history of life on Earth. Okay, so understand that of those 5 pieces, you really do not have to have them in the order in which they're there. You just want to make sure that you have represented all 5 of those pieces in your abstract. Now, this particular abstract has about 250 words in it, but you have 500. So you might add a little bit more background. You might say a little bit more to your methods, but it's at least, right? So you do not need to go up to 500 words. No one's going to give you extra credit if you decide to go all the way up to 499. Really say it succinctly, say it concisely, make sure that you get that down and really let it ring true for what it is. And that's going to be really important. Now, there are some issues that happen in this particular abstract, and I'm sure that you've noticed them along the way. I provided this for you really as is from Alexandria, as it has been shown. And so there are examples in this, and we want to take a look at that. And that's important as well. So it's not just focus and organization. It's not just about attending to those 5 things. We also want to make sure that we have an effective expression of our ideas. Please make sure that you're using precise language. You're using your academic and domain-specific vocabulary. The jargon that you have, it is not a bad thing for you to use scientific jargon. In fact, almost everything in science is jargon, if you think about it. I'll define that for you in a little bit. But just to make sure that you're clear and you've expressed exactly what your ideas are, and then it's appropriate for the audience and the purpose. You know, some students will say, well, the reader should know everything about what I'm writing about. No, then why would you be writing? If the whole world knew about that, why are you doing what you're doing? In many cases, the readers of your project, they're learning about science. Nobody knows it all. And so it is important that with humility, you recognize audience and purpose of really what you're trying to communicate. All right, so some common errors. Take a look at this down at the bottom. I recommend that everybody has, you know, that one little book. This is the one that I use all the time. It's called, I think appropriately, the only grammar book you'll ever need. I've used this so many times when I have a question, and you know, I teach this stuff and I still go back. Oh, what is that rule again? What is it that we have to do? Really great to be able to look at common areas. What you're seeing here is I've written down a few of them so that we could go through them. Redundancy is a really important piece. Redundancy, that's saying the same thing again, right? Sometimes it's just in the same word, like end result. You really don't need to have both of those words, because can you really have a result that's not in the end? Asking the question, it's impossible to ask anything except for a question. Rectangular in shape. So those are things that you want to avoid in the language that you're really providing in your writing. You don't need to be redundant like that. When I was in school, I misspelled redundancy, and my teacher made me write it 500 times. And so no, I'm just kidding. So that's redundancy. And so we want to make sure that we're not doing that in our writing. And also wordy expressions, a number of, you could just say a few, due to the fact that sense. You'll notice that there are a lot of those phrases that you may have in your family. People say them. Sometimes it's kind of showy language in a timely manner when you can just say promptly or on time. But in writing, you really want to have that concise, really when you're talking about your abstract. Here's another really big one that's that we really need to talk about is pretentiousness. We want to make sure that, and that's defined as an inauthentic attempt to impress readers by flexing vocabulary muscles and making an exaggerated outward show. So look at this example. This guy, Elliot Chan, I really highly encourage you to go on this website and see what this guy has to say. Man, I love his stuff. As I commence my journey to ascertain knowledge to optimally communicate my story with citizens of tomorrow, I aim to transcend the lives of those I have yet to meet, as literary legends I applaud had accomplished for me. Elliot Chan does a really good job of then saying, here's another writer that said really kind of the same thing, but here's one that really gets to the heart of what's going on. And he goes on to say that, you know, long, complex words should be like a pinch of salt that you would have to flavor your food. If you do too much, then it's going to make it inedible. You really want just a little bit that you're doing. And you're not writing, you know, like you're writing for a robot that's looking to just spit out results. You have passed, or you're the best, or whatever. You're really doing this because your writing is aimed at a human, and you're trying to connect. And that is really important. So pretentiousness in writing is something that we want to avoid. Now, there's three aspects of that pretentiousness that we want to avoid in this particular type of writing: lack of clarity, attempting to be impressive as opposed to expressive, and no awareness of the reader. So something for all of us to learn, really, as we are intelligent, focused, driven, passionate learners in science, and yet we have to avoid pretentiousness and really get to that humility and that authentic communication that I think is so needed in what we're trying to do. We also want to take a look at scientific jargon. Said I'd talk about this. So jargon is a specialized vocabulary in any science, right, or profession, and certainly we have a lot of it. But you know, sometimes that will just decrease readability. It will distract readers from the main focus. So you really don't. You have to be careful about the jargon that you're using and keep that audience in mind. So you have a couple of examples there. I'm running low on time and I want to make sure that I get through everything with you, but let's just take a look at one. The changes in the sequence of DNA during replication can affect other cellular processes such as transcription. And then you see that relative pronoun which, the possible revision is when the sequence is used to make an RNA copy. So again, sometimes just little things like that, you have 500 words that will allow the reader to really understand what you mean about it, because sometimes it's not about whether everybody understands. Everybody should understand what that is. Yes, but the reader needs to know that you understand that as well. And how are you defining that? What language are you using to define that? Very important for all of us to have that. Another really important standard, really, that we have in writing, this occurs at the 11th and 12th grade level. So if you happen to be younger, this is something to start to work on. It won't be required of you in terms of our standards in California, really until 11th grade, but it's something for us to all take a look at. So look at this. You want to have a parallel structure in your sentences that you're writing. See that first one? The speaker is someone who exhibits courage, fights for what is right, and he lives with great dignity. That sounds right? But it's not. It is not parallel. You've got to have that parallel. The speaker is someone who exhibits courage, fights for what is right, and lives with great dignity. Parallel structure means that you have the same pattern of words to show two or more ideas that have the same level of importance. So you want to make sure that at the word level, at the phrase level, at the clause level, that really you have that parallel structure, that same type of grammar that's going on. Look at number 3. On long bus rides, I usually like to listen to music more than I like reading. So now in this sentence, now this is actually part of a 7th and 8th grade standard, folks, that really you have an infinitive in the sentence and you also have a gerund. So either you're going to have 2 gerunds or you're going to have 2 infinitives. So look at the examples or the possible examples that you could revise this. On long bus rides, I usually like listening to music more than I like reading. So in this case, you have 2 of those gerunds. And on the next one, you have the infinitives. On long bus rides, I like to listen to music more than I like to read. So again, some of that writing will be important for us to happen. All in all, it is important that as you have your project, you're finishing up your project, you want to go back and do 2 things. You want to revise and edit your work. So as you're proofreading, you're thinking about, okay, how do I revise this in editing? And they are 2 different ways. Revising is like structurally some things need to move around to make it more sense, to make it sound better. And then editing makes it look better. You have some of the pieces like capitalization, punctuation, what people think of grammar, but really both of them are important. When you think of revising, you think of arms, what you add, remove, move, or substitute. It's okay to think about that, right? What goes in what place? You saw Alexandria. She did a wonderful job. Even though those were the 5 pieces that she had to have, she moved things around because it flowed better in the way that she was really connecting all of it. Editing is a little bit different. We think of cups. So capitalization, usage, punctuation, and spelling, right? And then primarily that's what you see. You don't hear those, right? It's like when you're using language, it's your capitalization. You don't hear when somebody didn't capitalize a letter, or you didn't hear when somebody misspelled a word. And so that's important. So teachers, you might in your classroom remind students the difference between both of those. And so here's a classroom that they put that up in the classroom. Wonderful reminder of what you have to do when you go back to revise and edit. If you do this in the classroom, though, please make sure if you're going to draw the arm, please make sure that you do not put any hair on the arm, because everyone has the right to bear arms. Okay. It's really hard to do a presentation where there's nobody in the background. You don't hear anything. And but I'll wait a little bit so that when you're done laughing. Okay, I guess you're done. All right. So revision, here's a strategy that you can do. You can do this, students, on your own. It's a classroom example, great way for folks to think about how they're going to revise their piece. This is in 6 traits now, and they put the 6 traits kind of as a checklist on these Post-it notes. And then you can work in groups, or you could work by yourself. Use a few of these to really, as a checklist, to go through and find out if they're working for you. So as a strategy. So the last thing I want to talk about, and I have a few more minutes, is really the command of conventions. So in the standards, we all have, there's few, if any, errors. But really, when you're talking about an abstract, you don't want to have any errors. No errors are present in usage or sentence formation. We want to have the effective and consistent use of punctuation, capitalization, spelling, very important. Hey, take a look at this, what the student did. In my wife's classroom, she asked the question, hey, what did you do this summer? Well, getting a sense, we're coming back from the pandemic. What did you do this summer? And this is what a student wrote. I got in the pool, I was reading, but that's not what the student communicated. And so we have to be very careful. We have to proofread, we have to go back, and we have to be sure what we're trying to communicate, because we're not always communicating what we're wanting to, right? Part of this is frequently confused words. Sometimes we're not communicating what we're wanting to communicate because we're confusing words. I wrote down a link there that really at Richmond EDU, it's an opportunity for you to take a look at some frequently confused words and some of their definitions and how they often get it. Vocabulary cartoons, I recommend that people get some kind of resource on vocabulary cartoons, or that's a good strategy to do in the classroom. Oh, I was going to pull that book out, but I forgot about it. But you can see there, the arrow affected the aardvark. The effect was eye-popping. So they use some alliteration to really help, and then the vocabulary cartoon to really sink that in to really what's the difference. I put some things down there with data and datum that comes up for every now and again. Remember, the word data is used two ways. It is the plural of datum, and so some people are snobby that way and say, well, technically, if it's just one piece of data, it's a datum. Well, that's not necessarily true, because data is also in the third grade standard called an abstract noun, like herd or group. So you would say, a herd of whatever, of triceratops. You would not say, you would not use the plural form of that. So data really works both ways. I put that reference there in Merriam-Webster so you could read that and be totally confused yourself. But data will really work for us both ways, and that's going to be okay. This is often confused, though. A lot of students will use IE, EG, or EX. So what do they mean? Two of those are Latin expressions. IE is id est. That literally means in Latin, that is. So it's that, and it's only that. So all employees will receive the standard discount, IE. That means that is 20%. It does not mean, for example. People will say that all the time, but it's not true. So it's that and only that. So if you put that in your writing, just make sure it's going to be that and only that. But EG is, for example, exempli gratia or something like that. Oh, gratia. So we want to make sure that it's for example, right? So it could be that and a bunch of other things, right? When I was on the stage, they threw a fruit at me, for example, apples and bananas, but right, for example, but it could have been pears and watermelon and all different kinds of stuff, right? So you want to just make sure that you have the right pieces. Now, a lot of people use in their writing EX, and they think that really is example for short, but that is not true. It is just an abbreviation of exercise. So really, when we're like in a math class and I don't know, we're doing a bunch of worked examples in the classroom, or there is an exercise, a bunch of them. And so open your books to this exercise 6, then that's what it's talking about there. So be careful about that. Is really not talking about example. And so you would use EG really to get that out. So hopefully that clears up some pieces for us. But again, I would just really point to you, this is why it's so important that the world of literacy and science comes together so that we're really understanding all that we have. Okay, so you probably noticed in the abstract, we had some issues. Alexandria had had a spelling error there. And then you see on that last sentence, the model has demonstrated that it's possible to use this time of model. Does she mean type of model? And so proofread your own work, say them out loud so that people really understand what it is that you're trying to communicate. And that can be really a wonderful way. Okay, so Brad Pitt marries Christina Aguilera. Good luck on writing your example. If you need more information, teachers, you want me to come to your school or to your district to help science literacy, our team, Greg, Yami, and I, we're more than happy to come out and to support you any way that we can. And so there's some contact information there. And it's been really a wonderful opportunity to be here today. Thank you, everybody. Have a really great day at the Expo.